Dear Chosen One, before we dive in, I want to take a moment to say thank you, truly, deeply, to every soul who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity helps us keep shining light into the places that have tried for too long to stay hidden. Whether you've donated or simply shown up and listened, I want you to know your presence is a gift. Your energy is felt, and you are appreciated more than words can express. Now let's begin, because this isn't just another video. This is a divine summons. The storm never knew your name, but it sure remembered your strength. They didn't just come for you, they came against the universe itself the moment they touched your anointing. What they didn't understand is that when the universe chooses someone, it doesn't play fair, it fights back. And while they mocked, while they plotted, while they laughed at your quiet, unseen suffering, you weren't just surviving. You were being reforged in silence, reshaped into someone they'd never recognize. Every hit they threw, it didn't destroy you, it sharpened you. Every betrayal was redirected, every attack became momentum. And what they didn't expect, what none of them saw coming, is that the light they tried to extinguish wasn't even yours to begin with. It was cosmic, it was divine, it was God flowing through you, and now that light is about to blind every single person who mistook your humility for weakness. So, before we go deeper, make sure you like this video and subscribe. Not just for your journey, but for every chosen soul still walking through fire, thinking they're alone. Every comment, every click, every donation tells the algorithm what the enemy hoped would stay buried. The chosen are waking up, and we're not whispering anymore. What you went through in silence is about to roar into the open. What once tried to crush you will now confirm you. This is not a comeback. This is divine compensation. The universe doesn't choose favorites. It chooses purpose. And when it chooses you, it doesn't just protect you. It exposes every weapon formed against you. Publicly, they thought they had you figured out, boxed in, broken down, predictable, but you were never theirs to label. Your script was written by something higher. They didn't see the betrayal wrapped in family, the sabotage dressed as support, the warfare hidden behind smiles, but heaven saw it, and you still didn't fold. The truth you carry now, it's not just your testimony, it's a sword. A frequency so high, it makes liars twitch and darkness scatter. It's not about revenge, it's about reckoning. Your voice is not for validation anymore, it's for vibration, activating others who are still trapped in their silence. Because let's be clear, the power of the Chosen One isn't in avoiding storms, it's in becoming the storm. You are the thunder they never expected, and while they scramble to rewrite their fiction, your truth stands solid, etched into the timeline like stone. That isolation you felt, it wasn't punishment, it was placement. The universe hides its most powerful souls in the shadows, not to break them, but to build them without interference. Now you step into the light not as who you were, but as who you were always destined to become. And they will not recognize you. Let them be shocked, let them be silenced, because your survival was never quiet. It was gathering force. And now it speaks. So drop 777 in the comments if you've ever had to heal in silence while people fabricated your story. If you've ever felt the sting of betrayal wrapped in fake support. If you know that something ancient, holy, and unstoppable is waking up in you right now, stay right here. Let this message find its place inside you. Because this isn't entertainment. It's a mirror. And if you really are one of the chosen, you won't just hear this. You'll feel it in your bones. Now, let's get into it. God's chosen ones, you're about to shock a lot of people with what you've survived. Number 1, time to rip the mask off. Chosen one, Have you ever wondered why the truth seems to make people so uncomfortable, especially when it comes from you? Why does your simple presence stir unease in those who've spent their lives crafting illusions? It's because the truth you carry isn't just factual, it's divine. It doesn't whisper, it thunders. And now is the moment you were born for, the moment when the mask comes off and the world sees exactly what you've survived. They thought they could bury the truth, but what they didn't realize is that truth buried in the heart of the chosen becomes pressure. And pressure on the chosen doesn't destroy, it refines. Just like Joseph in Genesis 50:20, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." They meant to break you, erase you, rewrite your story. But instead, they handed you the ink and the microphone. You didn't just crawl out of darkness, you brought light with you. Every locked door they thought would silence you has now become a doorway to your platform. Every whisper they spread now echoes as evidence of their own deception. They treated your life like a rumor, but now you're the headline. You're the front page of a divine shift no one can stop. Let me ask you something, chosen one. How many times did you feel like you were the villain in someone else's story, just because you dared to heal, to speak, to exist? They tried to cast you as a side character, but heaven wrote you in as the protagonist all along. You weren't protected by coincidence. The favor over your life is not random, it's spiritual architecture. The shield God built around you was invisible to your enemies, but undeniable in its effect. That discomfort people feel when you walk in the room, that sudden urge to discredit you for no reason, that's not personality, it's purpose. It's what Ephesians 6:12 warns about. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world. Chosen one, the attacks weren't personal, they were spiritual. You weren't just enduring gossip, you were surviving invisible warfare. Attacks dressed in smiles, betrayals hidden behind applause, traps set by people who pretended to cheer for you. But you survived all of it. No, more than survived. You stunned the spiritual realm by standing when everything was designed to make you fall. Look at Malala Yousafzai, shot in the head at 15 just for going to school. They tried to erase her, to end her story, but instead her voice now echoes across the globe. That's what happens when the universe shields the chosen. That's what happens when truth refuses to die quietly. Now it's your turn to speak, not softly but boldly. Your voice is not just a story, it's a vibration, a frequency that breaks curses, unmasks systems, and awakens others. Your life is now a broadcast tower for liberation. Psalm 118:17 declares it, "I shall not die, but live, and declare the works of the Lord." That's exactly what you're doing. Every word you say dismantles the lies that were spoken over you. You're not being dramatic, you're being divine. Let them say you're exaggerating. Let them squirm. Let them shrink back into confusion while you rise in clarity. They were never uncomfortable with your actions. They were terrified of your awareness. Because once you became aware, you became unstoppable. And you may be asking, why did I have to go through so much? Because strength like yours had to be earned in silence. The quiet you experienced wasn't neglect. It was divine isolation. God needed to build you where the noise couldn't reach. As Isaiah 45:3 reminds us, "I will give you hidden treasures, riches stored in secret places, so that you may know that I am the Lord." That's why it felt like abandonment, but it wasn't. It was construction. You were being forged in solitude so that when you emerged, you'd carry weight, anointing, not approval, power, not popularity. Consider Chadwick Boseman, silently battling cancer while filming roles that inspired millions. He was smiling while bleeding, carrying pain while uplifting others, just like you. He didn't announce his struggle, but his legacy revealed the weight of it. So too with you, chosen one. Your scars aren't shameful, they are sacred proof. Now, you stand where they swore you'd never arrive. They said you wouldn't make it, and yet, here you are, not just standing, but shaking the foundations of every lie built in your absence. And for those who tried to break you, what did they think would happen? That they could manipulate heaven's blueprint and suffer no consequences? You were the test, and they failed it. They played chess against the one who designed the board. The game is over, and you're the revelation they never wanted to face. Your survival is a sermon. Your existence is a sign. You were sent to wake the world up, and you can't do that with silence anymore. When you speak, others awaken. When you reveal the truth, other chosen ones remember who they are. That's why you're dangerous. That's why you're needed. Look at Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor who endured the unimaginable. Instead of collapsing into despair, he wrote, "Man's search for meaning, transforming trauma into wisdom. That's what the chosen do. We don't just suffer, we sanctify the suffering into purpose." So now, chosen one, step into the roar. Don't just whisper your truth. Declare it like thunder. You weren't made to be palatable. You were made to be prophetic. Let your truth sting. Let your survival shatter illusions. Let your existence confront every lie spoken in your name. Romans 8:37 tells you plainly, "No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us." That's you, not a survivor, a conqueror, a disruptor, a divine signal to the world that light still wins. And when they see you now, stronger, clearer, louder, don't flinch, don't apologize, don't shrink to fit the story they wrote for you. They were banking on your silence, but you were born to be the sound. Let your voice echo, let your truth rise, because chosen ones don't just outlive storms, they become the storm. Number 2, they bet against the flame, and now they're watching the firewalk. Chosen one, do you know what happens when someone bets against a soul anointed by God? They lose, spectacularly. They gambled on your downfall, counted your scars like trophies, and predicted your end with gleeful precision. But in their obsession with your pain, they missed the most important detail. Your pain was never the end. It was the beginning. They watched you break, not knowing it was a sacred breaking, a divine cracking open of who you were always meant to become. They were too focused on your tears to notice your transformation. They were too amused by your fall to realize they were witnessing your elevation. Just like Daniel, who refused to bow and was thrown into the lion's den, they assumed the pit would be your grave. But Daniel 6:22 declares, "My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths so that they have not hurt me." That's what happened for you. The mouths of your enemies roared, but they couldn't devour you. You walked among beasts and emerged untouched, because you were never walking alone. You were never meant to just survive. You were crafted to transcend. Every trap set for you became a stepping stone. Every insult hurled your way only added fuel to your fire. The universe wasn't being cruel when it let you fall. It was calibrating your rise. You were being sharpened in silence, molded in the heat of rejection, and now you're fireproof. Ask yourself this: how many storms did they expect you to drown in? And how many times did you come out stronger, clearer, more unshakable than before? They didn't know you were built in the unseen places. Just like David. Before he ever faced Goliath, David was practicing with lions and bears in secret fields. You too were trained when no one was watching, when no one believed in you, when no one was cheering. And now, just like in 1 Samuel 17:37, you can boldly say, "The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from this Philistine." You're no longer walking timidly into the spotlight. You're owning it. That light they used to burn you, Now it amplifies the power you carry. Remember Bethany Hamilton, the young surfer who lost her arm in a shark attack. They thought it would end her career. But what they didn't see coming was that her story would become a global symbol of grit, grace, and God's plan. She didn't just return to the waves, she conquered them. And you, chosen one, are now doing the same. You're not returning to the world the same. You're returning with new limbs of purpose, strength sown with pain, and vision baptized in fire. They laughed while you cried. They clapped while you bled. They whispered lies so loudly they hoped your silence would mean surrender. But your silence wasn't defeat. It was preparation. It was the chamber of your becoming. Every time you chose not to retaliate, every time you held your peace instead of explaining yourself, you were gathering spiritual momentum. And now, the fire they mocked is the flame that walks. Your story was never meant to end in the rubble. You were not born to be someone's casualty. You are not a subplot in someone else's egotistical script. You were always the main event. The universe orchestrated the timing and heaven arranged the stage. And just when they thought the curtains had closed for good, they're now forced to watch the encore they never prepared for. You're walking past ruins. Yes, the very ruins they left you in. You're walking with grace through the ashes of betrayal, through the debris of failed plots, through the silence that once held your scream. Like the 3 Hebrew boys in the fiery furnace, you went through the fire and came out not even smelling like smoke. Daniel 3:27 confirms it. They saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was a hair of their heads singed. Their robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. You didn't just survive, you defied nature itself. Look at Serena Williams, counted out after injuries, mocked for her intensity, ridiculed for her confidence. But each time she was dismissed, she came back louder, bolder, crowned in glory. They didn't understand that fire doesn't weaken the chosen, it reveals them, just like you. The pain didn't destroy you, it awakened you. It birthed a healer, a warrior, a leader, a living testimony. And yet, even now, some of you still carry guilt for rising. Some of you wonder, am I too much? Should I quiet down again? But hear this, your light is not too much. It's their blindness that's unprepared. You don't owe comfort to the ones who threw stones at your crown. You don't owe explanation to those who disappeared during your breakdown, but now want a front row seat to your comeback. Romans 8:18 tells us, I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. Your suffering had weight, but your glory will have volume. It will speak louder than their opinions, clearer than their lies, and longer than their doubts. That glory is now on display, and it will not be muted. And let's not forget Amanda Gorman, the youngest inaugural poet in U.S. history, a young black woman once silenced by a speech impediment who now moves nations with her words. That's what happens when silence becomes thunder. That's what happens when the buried voice of a chosen one breaks through. So rise, chosen one, not because the world gave you permission, but because God gave you a platform. Let the same silence they mistook for defeat now become the thunder in your voice. Let your scars be visible, proof that you were forged, not broken. And let your presence shake the room, because your rise is a revelation, one that no lie can bury, no storm can stop, and no enemy can understand. Isaiah 61:3 says it best, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. That's your inheritance. That's what you walk in now. So let them watch, let them question, let them tremble. They bet against the flame, but they never expected to see you walk through fire and come out crowned. Number 3, the doors didn't shut on you, they shut for you. Chosen one, how many times have you stood outside a closed door and assumed you were the problem? How many times did you replay every word, every step, every decision, wondering if you messed up? They told you the silence meant rejection, that the slammed doors meant failure, that every unanswered call, every no, every faded opportunity was punishment for some unseen flaw in you. But what if the truth was the opposite? What if those doors weren't shut in to keep you out, but to protect what's inside of you? They said you were unlucky, that you lacked wisdom or favor or grace. But what they didn't see, what they couldn't possibly know, was that God was intervening, pulling you away from rooms too small for the weight of your destiny. You weren't just being denied access, you were being rerouted by holy hands, just like Paul in Acts 16:6-7, who was kept by the Holy Spirit from preaching the word in the province of Asia. And the Spirit of Jesus would not allow them to go there. The Spirit closed the door, not because Paul was unworthy, but because the assignment was greater elsewhere. The same is true for you. They thought you were spiraling, that you were collapsing under the weight of poor choices or bad karma, but the universe wasn't punishing you, it was upgrading you. You weren't being rejected, you were being realigned. While they were clapping for themselves, convinced they'd outpaced you, you were being taught by silence, mentored by suffering, and guided by invisible hands that only the chosen can feel. Can you see it now? The very things you thought were signs of failure were actually seeds of purpose. It didn't feel like growth at the time, did it? It felt like punishment, like exile, like God went quiet right when you needed him most. But chosen one, when heaven goes silent, it's not always absence, it's strategy. The silence was your classroom. The loneliness, that was your initiation into greatness. And every tear you cried in private was watering the roots of a life no one saw coming. Do you remember how Oprah Winfrey was fired from her job as a news anchor because she was unfit for television? They closed the door on her, but that rejection was divine redirection. She wasn't made to sit behind someone else's news desk. She was born to create her own platform and open doors for millions. That's exactly what happens when a chosen one is pushed out. It's not banishment, it's expansion. No one talks about the pain of elevation. Everyone loves to talk about the glow-up, the stage, the applause, but not the process, not the heartbreak, not the betrayal by those you loved most, not the ghosting, the sabotage, the rejection that cuts deeper when it comes from people you would have defended with your life. But even those cuts served a holy purpose. John 15:2 says it clearly. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, so that it will be even more fruitful. What looked like loss was actually divine pruning. You were never being punished. You were being prepared to bear greater fruit. Let's be real. Some of you are still haunted by what didn't work out. You still mourn the job that didn't come through, the person who walked away, the opportunity that passed you by. But what if every no was a gate locking behind you so you couldn't return to something that no longer matched your vibration? You were evolving, growing, shedding old skin. That delay you hated was actually a setup for your elevation. That betrayal was a holy exit. That silence was God's whisper saying, not here, not yet, not with them. Look at Tyler Perry. He spent years homeless, living out of his car while chasing his dream. Every theater he rented stayed empty for a long time. People told him to quit, but he kept writing, kept believing. And one day, the audience showed up. That delay, that wasn't failure. That was refinement. Now he owns studios and controls narratives. The same God that rerouted his path is the one recalibrating yours. And you may wonder, why didn't they see my value? Chosen one, they weren't supposed to. Their blindness was part of the plan. If they had seen your worth, they would have tried to control it. That's why God had to hide you, to protect you from those who would misuse your gifts. Psalm 31:20 declares, "In the shelter of your presence, You hide them from all human intrigues. You keep them safe in your dwelling. That hiding wasn't rejection. It was sanctuary. Now the signs are everywhere. Numbers like 111 or 777 following you. Dreams so vivid they leave you breathless. Songs that play the exact words you needed to hear. Random strangers saying things that confirm your next step. No, you're not making it up. That's alignment. That's divine choreography. The universe is whispering, keep going, I've got you. And yet, some of you still doubt. You wonder if maybe you imagined the calling, if maybe you're too late. But if you were finished, would you still feel that fire, that tug, that pull every time you try to settle into smallness? Number. That's God saying, I'm not done with you yet. Maya Moore, the WNBA superstar, stepped away from her career in the height of her fame, not to rest, but to fight for justice. She followed a calling bigger than basketball. She followed the voice that told her, not now, not this way. And her obedience led to the release of an innocent man. That's what it looks like when a chosen one walks away from the world's applause to follow a higher mission. That's what you're doing now. So, chosen one, stop apologizing for being different. Stop toning yourself down to fit in rooms you've already outgrown. You were never supposed to settle. You were designed to soar. That door didn't slam on you. It slammed shut behind you to stop you from walking back into mediocrity. Isaiah 22:22 says, what he opens no one can shut, and what he shuts no one can open. That's your confirmation. You don't have to force anything. If it's God ordained, it will open without resistance. And if it closed, it's because God is guarding something greater. So here's the truth. You weren't rejected. You were protected. You weren't being pushed away. You were being pulled into position. So stand tall, walk forward, and stop mourning the door that shut, because your palace doesn't have a back door. It only has one entrance, forward, because what's ahead of you isn't just redemption, it's revelation, and you were chosen to walk through it. Number 4. Your truth could burn empires, and that's exactly why they feared you. Chosen one, have you ever wondered why your silence became the battlefield? Why so many fought to keep you confused, isolated, and unsure? Why they twisted your words before you even spoke them, cast shadows on your name before you ever stood in the light? It wasn't because you were weak. It was because deep down they knew the truth you carried could collapse kingdoms built on illusion. And now, that truth, your truth, is rising like a storm they can no longer contain. You don't just hold memories, you hold codes, messages encrypted through experience, revelations etched into your bones by betrayal, loss, and resilience. The very things they tried to weaponize against you, your vulnerability, your emotion, your pain, are now the very things that make your voice a force of reckoning. Just like Jeremiah, the prophet who once said in Jeremiah 20 verse 9, "His word is in my heart like a fire shut up in my bones. I am weary of holding it in. Indeed, I cannot." That fire, you know it well. It's been growing inside you, silently, persistently, waiting for the right moment to erupt. They didn't try to discredit you because you lied. They did it because they knew you'd eventually speak. And when a chosen one speaks, they don't just tell their story. They unlock other people's cages. You weren't just carrying your healing. You were carrying freedom for the ones watching in silence, the ones who needed to see someone survive what they were told no one could live through. Think of whistleblower Frances Haugen, who exposed internal practices at Facebook that endangered millions. They tried to silence her with intimidation and backlash, but once she spoke, the world couldn't unsee what was revealed. Like her, chosen one, your truth is not petty, it is powerful. It has the capacity to alter perceptions, shake systems, and demand accountability. And let's talk about that pressure you've been feeling, the tension in your chest, the restlessness that creeps in during the quiet moments, the frustration that grows when you hold it all in. That's not anxiety. That's unspoken truth trying to find its voice. That's divine urgency knocking on the door of your spirit, reminding you that you weren't meant to carry this fire in silence forever. You were never designed to protect the comfort of the ones who built their thrones on your silence. Remember when they called you unstable, dramatic, overly emotional? It wasn't an honest reflection. It was projection. They weren't scared of your instability. They were terrified of your awakening, because they knew that once you saw clearly, once you remembered who you were, once you spoke the unedited version, they couldn't control the narrative anymore. Just like Jesus before Pilate, when asked what truth he stood for, Jesus answered in John 18:37, "For this reason I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth." That same call echoes in you. You weren't born to pacify lies. You were born to confront them. And when you do, it shakes the foundations of everything that depended on your silence to survive. You weren't just hurt, you were hunted. Not for what you did, but for what you could become. And you're becoming it now. Every whisper you used to suppress is turning into a roar. Every unshed tear is rising into thunder. And even if the world still doubts you, chosen one, the heavens have already confirmed you. Think of actor Brendan Fraser, once blacklisted and mocked, now risen from silence and celebrated not for fitting into their mold, but for surviving their machine. He didn't beg for re-entry. He showed up in his truth. And the world made space. That's the power of authenticity when it's carried by the chosen. You don't need permission to rise. You only need permission to stop pretending you're small. They tried to bury the real version of you beneath layers of shame, confusion, and false accusation. But here's the divine twist. They only buried the seed. And that seed, watered by isolation and grown in silence, is now cracking open with uncontainable force. Isaiah 54:17 proclaims, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment you shall condemn." That is your inheritance. Their lies will collapse under the weight of your clarity. And yes, it's been exhausting. The nights where your mind wouldn't stop racing. The days where your chest felt heavy with unspoken truths. The moments where you wanted to scream but chose silence because you didn't know if anyone would believe you. But all of that pain, it was refining your voice, not breaking it. Consider Monica Lewinsky, long shamed, silenced and villainized by a world that never listened to her side. But years later she returned, not as a victim, but as an advocate, speaker, and force for truth in the age of digital shame. She didn't reclaim her power by hiding. She reclaimed it by owning the story they tried to erase, and so will you. You don't just carry pain, you carry prophecy. You are not here to protect the reputations of people who built their narratives on falsehood. You are here to correct the record, to speak the unspoken, to become the sound that awakens the sleepers. The truth in you isn't here for pity, it's here for revolution. Psalm 37:6 declares, "He will make your righteous reward shine like the dawn, your vindication like the noonday sun." That's what's coming next. Not just healing, but vindication. Not just survival, but revelation. So let them say you've changed. Let them recoil in discomfort. You're not the edited version of yourself anymore. You're the full, fiery, unfiltered truth. And you carry it not out of spite, but out of alignment. Because this truth, the one they tried to bury, isn't a story. It's a sword. So speak, chosen one. Speak like the storm you are. Not to hurt, but to heal through fire. Not to shame, but to shatter illusions. And not to prove them wrong, but to prove that truth, once awakened, never sleeps again. Number 5. They wrote you in as the villain, but you were the plot twist they couldn't control. Chosen one, have you ever looked around and realized you were cast as the villain in a story you didn't even write? Have you ever watched people twist your intentions, rewrite events, and assign you blame not because of your actions, but because of your presence? It's a strange thing, isn't it, to become the threat simply by existing in your truth. But this is what happens when your spirit becomes a mirror, and the people around you can't stand their reflection. They didn't need a villain. They needed a distraction, someone to throw their shadows on, someone to pin the consequences of their own choices upon. And you were too easy, too quiet, too forgiving, too divine for a world that often weaponizes innocence. So they did what frightened people always do. They attacked what they couldn't control. But let's tell the truth. You were never the villain. You were the mirror. And when mirrors reveal what people don't want to see, they try to shatter them. That's why they turned the spotlight on you. That's why the story got edited. That's why you were suddenly unstable, dramatic, too emotional. Not because you were those things, but because your clarity threatened their illusion. Just like Jesus himself, who was crucified not for crimes, but for truth. Mark 15:10 says, "For he knew that it was out of envy that the chief priests had handed Jesus over to him." You see, chosen one, it wasn't your wrongdoing that made you dangerous. It was your radiance, your refusal to shrink, your refusal to become what they needed you to be for their comfort. And in that silence, you started to question yourself, didn't you? You wondered, did I really see what I saw? Did I make it up? That's what spiritual gaslighting does. It makes you doubt your divine perception. But the universe doesn't lie. God does not confuse. You know what happened. Even if no one else ever admits it, you felt the shift. You saw the masks. You watched betrayal unfold with a smile. Look at Meghan Markle, labeled difficult, divisive, manipulative, when all she did was marry a prince and shine too brightly in a palace that was never designed to hold her light. The world tried to silence her truth. But the more they pressed, the more her voice became a global conversation. That's what happens when chosen ones are miscast. The truth eventually redirects the spotlight. And chosen one, what you endured, it wasn't just emotional, it was energetic, strategic, spiritual. That's why it felt surreal, why doors opened without keys, why you received warnings in dreams, why strange coincidences kept pulling you back onto your path even when you were ready to quit. That wasn't delusion. That was divine guidance. That was God pulling you out of the narrative they wrote and placing you back into the story He authored. Isaiah 41:10 speaks to that divine rescue. Do not fear, for I am with you. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. You weren't crazy, you were covered. And now, every lie spoken against you is unraveling under the weight of truth you never had to force. Because when the truth is real, you don't have to shout it. You only have to survive long enough for it to rise. Let's talk about John Boyega, the actor who played Finn in Star Wars. When he spoke out about racism in Hollywood and the treatment he faced even within the franchise that made him famous, he was labeled problematic, but he stood firm. He didn't apologize for the truth, and now his voice is respected across the industry. Just like you, chosen one, your truth may have cost you peace in the moment, but it's birthing justice in the long run. You see, they couldn't destroy your calling, so they tried to destroy your credibility. They couldn't handle your anointing, so they tried to smear your name. They thought that by turning people against you, they could neutralize your power. But what they failed to realize is that chosen ones are not fueled by public opinion. They are fueled by divine alignment. Psalm 34 verse 19 says, "Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all." You weren't just delivered from the situation, you were delivered from needing their approval. And now, Your presence is louder than their lies. Your peace is louder than their chaos. Your survival is louder than the character they created for you. The people who watched you fall with joy are now watching you rise in silence. Because you don't have to shout when your truth is living proof. They called you drama, dysfunction, chaos. But the only chaos was the panic they felt when your clarity walked into the room. When you stopped shrinking, when you stopped apologizing, when you stopped editing your light so others wouldn't feel exposed. And yes, chosen one, the betrayal cut deep. Not just the lies, but the people who knew better and said nothing. The ones who watched and stayed silent because it was easier to align with power than with principle. That pain, it cleared the path. It showed you exactly who never deserved access to your next level. Take Monica Lynn Brown, a US Army medic awarded the Silver Star for shielding her fellow soldiers under heavy fire in Afghanistan. She wasn't expected to lead, but when the moment came, she didn't ask for permission. She acted. She showed up. And that's what you're doing now. You're not asking for validation. You're walking with undeniable authority. And here's the part they never saw coming. The villain they painted is now holding the pen, not to rewrite the past, but to set the record straight, not with revenge, but with revelation. You don't have to raise your voice. Your presence is enough. Your calm is enough. Your discernment is enough. 2 Corinthians 4:8-9 says, "We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed." That's the verse stitched into your soul. That's the script they could never erase. So now, chosen one, let your truth speak. Not as a scream, but as a quiet, steady unraveling. Let their fiction collapse under the weight of your reality. Let them watch the story they tried to silence become the revelation that sets others free. You were never the villain. You were the awakening. You were the chapter they tried to rip out, only to realize you were the whole book. Number 6, you're not coming back for payback. You're coming back for what's yours. Chosen one, have you ever noticed how quick people are to label your return as revenge? How fast they assume your restoration must mean you're bitter, angry, or trying to prove something. But here's the truth. They can't wrap their minds around. You're not returning to settle scores. You're returning to reclaim your seat. You're not fueled by vengeance. You're fueled by clarity, by purpose, by the quiet but unshakable knowing that what was taken from you is already being returned, not by force but by divine order. This isn't revenge, it's restoration. This is divine justice unfolding in real time. And no, it doesn't come with explosions or grand gestures. It comes like a slow sunrise after a long night. Just as Job 42:10 declares, "After Job had prayed for his friends, the Lord restored his fortunes and gave him twice as much as he had before." The ones who tried to define you didn't realize they were setting the stage for a double portion. You weren't rising to retaliate. You were rising because God never intended for you to stay in the dirt they tried to bury you under. They thought they'd silenced you. They thought they had locked you into the character they created, passive, broken, irrelevant. They thought the fog of rumors would outlast your truth. But the universe has a memory. God keeps receipts. And now, your presence is correcting the record without a single word needing to be forced. You are the proof. You are the plot twist. You are the restoration. Have you noticed how people begin to squirm when you enter rooms they never expected you to walk back into? How their stories change, not because you called them out, but because your existence calls out everything they tried to erase. That's what Psalm 23:5 looks like in action. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You didn't invite them to watch you rise, but now they can't look away. Think about Simone Biles, stepping away from the Olympics not because she couldn't compete, but because she refused to sacrifice her mental and spiritual well-being for applause. The world called her dramatic, unprofessional, weak. But when she returned, she didn't come back for revenge. She came back aligned, powerful, re-centered. That's what you're doing now. You're not performing. You're walking in your truth. And truth has gravity. It doesn't chase. It doesn't scream. It simply pulls everything into place. That's what makes your return so disruptive. Not your volume, but your vibration. The very frequency of your presence is unsettling every false version of you they built. Every whisper collapses in the face of your peace. Every rumor dissolves when they realize you're not explaining, you're embodying. And yes, they will say you've changed, that you've become cold, unapproachable, different. But what really happened is this: you stopped begging people to see you. You stopped auditioning for love that should have been unconditional. You stopped watering dead soil, just like Esther, who rose not to beg for favor, but to stand in her divine moment, even if it meant confronting an entire system. Esther 4:14 reminds us, perhaps you were born for such a time as this. And you were. Let's not forget the moments they called you petty for staying quiet. The moments they accused you of being unhealed for not entertaining their revisionist history. But what they don't see, what only the chosen one knows, is that silence isn't weakness, it's refinement. You could have dragged them, you could have exposed them, you could have posted receipts, named names, burned bridges, but you didn't, because your focus was never on revenge, it was on rising. Look at Malcolm X, whose reputation was constantly redefined by people who feared his truth. Even after his death, attempts were made to dilute his legacy. But his voice, his truth, outlived the lies. You don't need public opinion when heaven has already spoken. You don't need to defend your name when your walk speaks louder than their words. Proverbs 16:7 says, "When a man's ways please the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him." That's what your walk looks like now. Not revenge, but divine favor. Not proving a point, but fulfilling prophecy. And let's be honest, some of you thought you'd never make it back here. You thought maybe the damage was too deep. Maybe the lies stuck. Maybe you missed your moment. But the fact that you're reading this right now is your confirmation. You're not too late. You're right on time. Think of Brendan Fraser, once mocked, erased and discarded by the very industry that celebrated him. For years he disappeared, and then he returned, not with noise but with authenticity. And when he did, the world stood up. He didn't come back to gloat, he came back for what was his. So do you. So let them talk, let them mislabel it, let them stay blind if they choose. Because what you're walking in now doesn't need validation. It is divine restoration. And the beauty of restoration is this: the very people who dismissed you now have to witness your return. Not to make them small, but to remind you how big your God is. Romans 8:28 is not just a verse, it's your banner. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. The pain was not in vain. The betrayal was not final. The delay was not denial. It was all preparation for this moment. So, chosen one, walk, not in arrogance but in authority, not with noise but with weight, not to demand your worth, but to move like someone who never lost it. You're not coming back to prove a point. You're coming back to fulfill one. Number 7, you didn't run. You were pulled out by timing that doesn't miss. Chosen one, have you ever had to vanish not because you were weak, but because you were being called to survive? One moment, you were in the middle of everything, present, visible, connected, and the next, you were gone. No goodbye, no final conversation, no grand exit, just absence. And when you left, they didn't call it transformation. They called it cowardice. But they didn't see what was really happening, did they? They called you unstable, unreliable, impulsive. But they missed the most important truth. You weren't running, you were being rescued. That wasn't fear guiding you. That was divine intelligence. That was God's emergency alert sounding inside your soul, whispering, "Go now." Exodus 14:15 tells us, "Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on.'" That's what happened. You weren't abandoning your life. You were obeying the call. They didn't realize the building was on fire, but you did. Not the kind of fire that burns walls, but the kind that burns through your peace, your spirit, your sanity. And you weren't escaping. You were exiting a system that would have swallowed your light whole if you stayed. That kind of exit doesn't require permission. It requires faith. Some of you left with nothing but your name, and even that felt fragile. You changed your number, blocked their access, moved in silence. Not because you hated them, but because you were choosing yourself for the first time in a long time. That kind of silence, it's not avoidance, it's warfare, it's strategy. It's the moment you refuse to let trauma dictate your direction anymore. Think of Sinead O'Connor. Long before it was acceptable to call out corruption, she took a stand on live television and was ostracized by the world. But what people called madness was really moral clarity. She walked away from the system, not to disappear, but to protect something sacred in herself. That's what you did too. They mocked your silence, but it was sacred. It was survival. And chosen one, it wasn't that you didn't love those people. It was that you couldn't heal in the same place that broke you. You were loyal for so long, to pain, to familiarity, to people who only clapped when you stayed small. But there came a day when your spirit screamed louder than your trauma, and you listened. That was the day the shift happened. You weren't running from something, you were running toward something, toward clarity, toward healing, toward peace. And the moment you obeyed that inner call, something broke open in the spiritual realm. Just like when Elijah had to flee into the wilderness, weary and overwhelmed, and yet it was there, in the cave, in the silence, that God met him. 1 Kings 19:12 reminds us, "After the fire came a gentle whisper." That whisper, that's what led you out. You may still wonder, why did it all happen so fast, so messily? But chosen one, when divine timing hits, there's no room for perfect exits. God doesn't wait for your reputation to catch up with your revelation. When it's time to go, it's time. And sometimes the only confirmation you get is how light your spirit feels once you're finally gone. Look at Dave Chappelle. At the height of fame and fortune, he vanished from his TV empire without explanation. People called him crazy, but years later, when he returned, he came back on his own terms, with truth, with power, with legacy. That's what happens when chosen ones walk away, not to vanish, but to realign. And now, something incredible is happening. The very path you walked through fire to escape is becoming a light for others. You didn't know it then, but your silent exit was a map. Your journey in the shadows is becoming someone else's guidance in the storm. Revelation 12:11 says, "They triumphed by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony." That's what you carry now, a testimony wrapped in quiet strength. Yes, it was lonely. Yes, it was confusing, but the universe doesn't tear down without building something better. What you lost in people, you gained in power. What you lost in proximity, you gained in purpose. The silence that once felt like isolation was actually incubation. Remember Rick Moranis, a comedy icon who stepped away at the peak of his career to raise his children after his wife passed away. The world didn't understand his departure, but he wasn't leaving for escape. He was stepping into a different kind of calling, one not measured by applause, but by purpose. And that's you. You didn't leave to hide. You left to heal, to reset, to prepare. And now, chosen one, the season of invisibility is ending. You're not coming back to re-explain yourself. You're coming back as evidence, not of revenge, not of perfection, but of protection. The very thing that pulled you out is now sending you back in, not to return to what broke you, but to become a beacon for others still trapped there. If anyone asks why you vanished, you don't owe them an elaborate story. The truth is simple, because staying would have killed me, leaving saved me. Psalm 91:3 says, "Surely he will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence." And he did. That's why you're still here. Some will never understand your disappearance, and they're not meant to. Your exit wasn't for them, it was for you. And now your return, that's for the world. So walk back in, not with explanation, but with revelation. Walk in like someone who obeyed the whisper, honored the pull, and trusted the timing. You didn't run, you were sent, and now you return, not with noise, but with undeniable presence. You didn't leave to disappear, you left to lead. Number 8, your breakthrough wasn't just yours, it was the blueprint. Chosen one, have you ever wondered why your survival feels like more than just a personal victory? Why your healing seems to echo beyond your own life? It's because your breakthrough wasn't just for you. It was designed to become a blueprint, a map etched in scars and silence, meant to guide others out of places they still think they're destined to die in. You didn't just escape the fire, you became the exit sign. The clarity you carry now isn't decoration, it's direction. It shows others that survival is not a myth, that peace is possible, that healing isn't reserved for a select few, but for the willing and the brave. Isaiah 58:8 says, "Then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you." That's what your journey is now, a dawn for someone else's darkness. You're not just walking proof, you're prophetic proof. The version of you that made it through, the one with trembling hands but a steady spirit, is a sacred message to every soul still stuck in the quicksand of trauma. And it's not about being loud or flashy, it's about being present, about letting your existence whisper, "If I made it out, so can you." Think of Viola Davis, who rose from deep poverty and childhood trauma, not just to become a renowned actress, but a force of purpose. She tells her story with power and vulnerability, not for sympathy, but to shine a light on others walking the same path. She didn't survive to wear the crown, she survived to break chains, just like you. Chosen one, let's talk about what got you here. You broke the cycle. You refused to accept that your worth was tied to your wounds. You shattered the narrative that said peace was for other people, that you were too broken to be whole again. And in doing so, you shifted something ancient. You shifted generational weight that tried to pass itself off as destiny. Romans 8:18 reminds you, "I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us." And that glory, it's now revealing itself through the calm in your voice, the glow in your eyes, the boundaries you now set without apology. You are not just healed, you are healing others without even realizing it. When you walk into a room now, people feel safe without knowing why. They feel possibility without understanding the cost behind your peace. That's the magic of a chosen one in alignment. You radiate what others are still fighting for. Look at Trevor Noah. From apartheid-era South Africa to global stage domination, he turned pain into perspective, oppression into observation. His humor became a tool for education, his life a testimony of transcendence. He didn't just escape, he became a compass. And now it's your turn, chosen one, to embrace that your glow isn't accidental, that your elevation is not just a gift, it's an assignment. You're not just here to bask in light, You're here to reflect it back into every corner that tried to swallow you. Your vindication is real, not the kind that comes with noise, but the kind that comes with return. The return of peace, of clarity, of joy, of time, of energy. Joel 2:25 is your confirmation. I will restore to you the years the swarming locusts have eaten. And the restoration won't just balance the scales, it will tip them in your favor. You're not coming into abundance, you are becoming abundance. And it shows, not just in what you have, but in who you are. You attract people who see your light without needing you to dim. You encounter opportunities that feel tailor-made for your evolution. And the best part, you don't have to force any of it. You simply flow in alignment. Let's define that alignment. It's not a trendy word, it's a spiritual calibration, a decision to stop chasing what was never yours and start embracing what is. It means walking away from anything that makes your soul shrink, from patterns that once felt familiar but now feel foreign, from rooms that clap for your potential but fear your power. And chosen one, you no longer shine because you're trying. You shine because you've stopped hiding. That light in you isn't ego, it's evidence. It says, I've been through it, and I didn't just survive, I transformed. Let them watch, let them stare in awe. Let them wonder how the one they counted out is now the example. The one they tried to silence is now speaking life. The one they underestimated is now walking in overflow. Spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and yes, even financially. Think about Howard Schultz, former CEO of Starbucks, who grew up in housing projects and poverty. He didn't just build a brand, he built a platform rooted in experience, not theory. His rise wasn't loud, it was undeniable, just like yours. And as your life begins to glow louder, people will whisper, not because they're curious, but because they're convicted. Your light exposes their shadows. But you weren't chosen to dim, you were chosen to lead. Quietly, boldly, authentically. Psalm 126 verse 5 says, those who sow in tears will reap with songs of joy. Every silent breakdown, every private battle, every moment you thought no one saw, you sowed. And now, chosen one, you're reaping. This is cosmic justice wearing your face, not because you begged for it, but because you aligned with it. And you won't hoard this breakthrough. You'll become it, you'll walk it, you'll share it with every soul still searching for their exit. So let the world see you now, not as the survivor, but as the waymaker, the blueprint, the radiant contradiction to every lie ever spoken about what people like you could or couldn't become. They said you'd be forgotten, that you'd always be broken, that you'd vanish under the weight of your wounds. But here you are, not just healed, but healing, not just restored, but overflowing, not just free, but leading others to freedom. Number 9, your words won't just echo, they'll engrave. Chosen one, have you ever felt the weight of your own voice and wondered why it trembles when you try to tell the truth? Why the world seemed to fight so hard to silence you? It's because your voice is not ordinary. It was never meant to simply echo. It was meant to engrave. Not to fade into memory, but to be carved into legacy. Permanent, unerasable, eternal. You're standing in the turning point right now. This moment isn't just a chapter in your journey, it's the hinge upon which destiny swings. The voice they tried to bury has not just returned, it's evolved. And now, when you speak, you don't just release sound, you release spiritual current, you rearrange energy, you awaken truth, you shake foundations that have stood untouched for generations. This isn't about storytelling anymore, this is sacred technology. When a chosen one speaks from a place of divine alignment, heaven doesn't just listen, it moves. Isaiah 55:11 says, "So is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire. That's what your voice does now. It doesn't float, it accomplishes. It builds, it breaks, it blesses. You're not just telling what happened to you, you're shifting what's possible for everyone who hears you. Your survival used to be private, now it's public prophecy. Your scars have become syllables. Every word you speak is a vibration that splits through darkness like lightning, revealing paths for others who never thought they'd make it out alive. Consider the legacy of Nelson Mandela. He didn't just speak of freedom, he activated it. Even after 27 years of silence in a prison cell, his voice returned, and it reshaped an entire nation. That's what happens when silence is divine. When it breaks, it builds history. And now that same authority is on your tongue. You may not have a platform made of cameras and crowds, but your influence is encoded in eternity. You're not just speaking for yourself, you're speaking for the voiceless, for the silenced, for those still curled up in the corners of shame, waiting for someone like you to say, "You're not crazy, you're called." Luke 21:15 offers this divine promise, "For I will give you words and wisdom that none of your adversaries will be able to resist or contradict." That's your confirmation. You're not speaking from emotion, you're speaking from revelation. The enemy can't cancel it. The critics can't decode it. The spiritually blind can't comprehend it. But those who are meant to hear it, they'll feel it in their bones. You're not just a person, you're a frequency, a walking transmission of everything you've overcome. The tremble in your voice has become thunder. The whisper you once held back now shakes strongholds. And here's the miracle. Your words will reach rooms you'll never step into. Think about Anne Frank, a teenage girl in hiding, writing in a diary that the world was never meant to read. She never gave a speech, never stepped onto a stage. And yet, decades later, her truth still breathes. Her voice still softens hearts, ignites change, and reveals injustice. That's what happens when the chosen ones speak. Even in silence, they still speak. So let me ask you this. What if your words aren't just for now, but for later? What if every truth you share today is building a foundation someone else will stand on tomorrow? What if your obedience to speak is someone else's liberation in disguise? You're not just leaving behind memories, you're leaving behind monuments, legacy, structure, a sacred blueprint of boldness, because your words don't fade like casual conversation. They crystallize into something indestructible. John 6:63 says, "The words I have spoken to you, they are full of the Spirit and life. So are yours now, not just thoughts, not just opinions, life." Even when your voice goes quiet, your words will keep working. They will echo through generations, appearing in the minds of people you'll never meet, showing up in moments when someone else needs a sign. You're laying stones in the foundation of spiritual freedom, and every syllable you speak is a stepping stone for others to rise. Look at Maya Lin, the young Asian American architect who designed the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. At just 21 years old, her design was nearly rejected because of its simplicity and silence. But that monument, black granite etched with names, speaks louder than speeches ever could. Just like the words you speak now, you don't need volume to be powerful. You need truth. And the truth is this: everything you've ever said in alignment, every whispered word of survival, every declaration of "I'm still here," every raw confession of pain is now engraved in the fabric of the universe. It can't be erased, it can't be undone. Let them say your time has passed. Let them scoff at your return. Let them pretend not to hear you. But your words are engraving themselves into eternity. They will be repeated. They will be remembered. They will spark transformation long after your name fades from memory. Because when a chosen one speaks, they don't just echo, they eternalize. So speak, chosen one. Speak with thunder in your lungs, with lightning in your cadence, with heaven in your frequency. Because your voice isn't just being heard, It's being recorded in the very soil of destiny. Beloved chosen ones, thank you for walking this sacred journey with me. Every word we've shared, every truth we've uncovered has been a testament to the power you carry, not just to survive, but to transform reality itself. Your voice is no longer a whisper in the dark. It's a call to awakening that's rippling through generations. Your story isn't just yours anymore. It's a torch, a signal, a lifeline, and I honor you for carrying it with such courage. If this message spoke to your soul, and you'd like to help this movement continue reaching others, you can support through the Super Thanks option below. Whether you choose to donate or not, I am deeply grateful for your presence here. Every like, every comment, every moment you spend listening and reflecting is already a gift. You being here matters more than you know. And now, I bless you with everything your spirit has been waiting for. Clarity, strength, divine guidance, and unshakable peace. May your voice never tremble again. May your truth echo through eternity. May your legacy engrave itself in places your feet never touched. And may you always remember this: you were chosen. You are rising. And this is only the beginning. With reverence and love, bless you always.